technique that I've been using the past 2 years. It didn't start well, that's for sure. I'll say the truth. But for me, discussion forums are the most realistic tool that instructors have on an online basis to entice, interact, communicate, to engage, and most of all to teach students. Since the discussion forums are made out of prompts, and I create those prompts, I like to create them, I like to invent them, I like to have fun. So as an instructor, I jump in.
A lot of times at the beginning of the semester, I take that first week of their assignments and I leave very, very, very specific feedback. Because I think the first week takes a little bit of conditioning for students to kind of understand what's expected of them in class and of different instructors. So I take that time to leave them very specific feedback. A lot of times I will say to them, in the future, I might take a regular penalty, but I'm going to reduce the penalty so you can use that time to improve for the rest of the semester. And students have come to me later and told me that they really appreciated how much time I've taken.
Looking at those statistics, it's so interesting just to see, oh, okay, so you are interacting, or do I need to encourage the interaction? And if I see that I need to boost or encourage some interaction, I have actually thrown out there let's get maybe some extra credit going. And I just posted something in the discussion board. Take a look at it and see, what you would think of. What do you think about this? And it could be just a general matter that we're discussing pertaining to the subject.
So if I'm grading on a discussion board, I'll leave feedback there as a reply on the discussion board. Sometimes replying to the individual student, and sometimes just doing my own initial post and pinning that post to the top of the discussion board so that it stands out to other students.
My discussions always end on Tuesday nights at midnight. So come Monday or Tuesday, it's like a flurry of activity on the discussion board, students trying to post before the deadline. And for them in particular, they're often missing what's happened earlier in the week because they don't have time to go back and reread it. So what I'll often do, like on a Friday afternoon, for example, the discussion's been open for a while, is I will look at what's there, and then I will have responded to a few individual students, and then I'll do a pinned post that either kind of synthesizes what I'm hearing on the discussion board so far, or I'll say like, oh, okay, like I see this happening. I'm teaching writing. In your writing, I'm seeing that you guys, when you're referring to authors of texts, you're using first names. Hey, we tend to use last names. I see a lot of you doing this. Just FYI, check your posts. And then I'll pin that at the top so that students hopefully, even if they're going in just like really quickly to do their own post before the deadline, they might have time to read my pinned post, which would give them kind of a sense of what's been happening on the discussion board. And then I also always in that pinned post, I'll ask, because there are students that are looking on early, I'll say, hey, like respond to me, let me know if you're hearing me. So often through my pin post, you'll see I'll have like 5 or 6 responses from students. And they'll say, I hear you, professor, I got it, thanks for the advice. Oh, I realized I did this in my discussion board. Summarizing for students who don't have time or won't read other people's posts. It's gonna help me address a lot of students at once instead of individual students all the time. And then it also gives me a chance to interact with students who want that feedback on the discussion board, but I can kind of centralize them to my post as opposed to having to go in and try to, again, within these threads, respond to every little thing that they say back and forth.
The first time that I started to jump into the topic and maybe replying to their post, sometimes with a question, sometimes with a disagreement, sometimes with a rebuttal, only a few engaged in battle. Now I have to say the truth that within the last year, I have at least a good number, not the majority, but a good number, maybe 12 or 13, that are really eager and anxious, waiting for my rebuttal directly on the discussion forum. They know that by answering correctly my question, they can choose also to answer a question or reply to some other student. I say, you're free to reply to mine. But they engage immediately, and they know that they will gather a good bundle of grades by doing this if their answer is in context, with the question that I asked. And one of the most revealing products of this little technique, it's becoming quite a big technique now, jumping into the post itself. Like if I was a student and emphasizing to them, and I put that in my rubric, you know, guys, try to disagree. You can do that in a polite manner. Let's go with dialectics, and that's how a discussion works. It's not an essay. But one of the most revealing products is that more and more students are posting at a very early stage when the discussion forum opens by doing this technique. They know that by doing this, they gave me time. They give me time to give them real feedback and to rebuttal, and so they have the chance to answer to my question and get a good amount of grades, that's for sure.
I would encourage them to start small and try. Not every response in the discussion threads has to be extensive with references and citations, but it has to acknowledge that student in the work that they did, maybe add something, ask a question, provide some insight. That's very necessary for our students because they're 100% online. We don't get any of that interactive exchange, talking to them, seeing them face to face, encouraging them. So for us to be in the discussion boards, encouraging them, furthering the conversation, adding to their post, giving them some kudos in front of their peers, it's very important.
It's good to give them feedback that I only want them to see in the grade, so I will do both. But but I usually try to respond to everybody in the discussion board, and I leave it largely positive. Rarely will I leave them something very critical in the discussion board. And again, I try to keep it short but meaningful and generally original. And then if there's something that I want them to kind of consider on their own, I will leave that in the grading section alone so that only they can see it.
It's really a threefold process for me. What I like to do is first compliment them on something that they did really well. Second, I will pick out two very specific examples from their post so that they know that I actually read their work. Because I know students sometimes will spend 2 or 3 hours or even more on assignments. And then if they just get a reply that says, good job, I think that's a little bit disappointing as a student. So I think it really shows the collaborative effort towards the educational journey if we take the time to actually give them some kind of feedback and show that we're reading their work. So what I like to do is pick out two specific examples from what they've submitted and comment on that. And then the third part is, of course, I leave any kind of feedback for them to improve upon their work.
The grading, it should be expected. It should be expected that we're giving specific tailored feedback to every student. If it were your work, you would want the same response from your instructor. You would want to know what you did or didn't do well and how you can improve on it.